We gather in peace. We gather in thanks. We gather in hope, compassion, and strength, and to celebrate once again. We will rise shortly to sing hymn 347. Please rise now as you are able and greet the person next to you, especially someone whom you do not know.
Today is no ordinary day. It is Sunday. We light this chalice each week on this hallowed day as we gather together as community. You and I and all of us blew about with the winds of summer, following the sun in different ways of freedom and play, finding rest in the cool stillness of shadows and moving to the slow, heat-struck rhythms which turned the long hours of summer light. Now it is time for gathering in. We come together at this time and in this place on the bridge of autumn. Summer is fading backwards into memory, and winter waits in snowy brilliance. We meet with eagerness and delight, needing one another for sharing. We have joys and sorrows and hopes to share, questions, things we care about and want to help make better, things that we would like to understand, ideas waiting to be heard. Today we are gathered in gladness, once more the special community that we call church, a community of all ages that sings its songs, tells its thoughts, asks its questions, and searches together with courage and love. Oops. There's a lot to remember. I am Peg Argent. My husband, Joe, and youngest child, Michaela Azalea, and I have been members here for 3 years. Prior to that, we had spent 27 years attending and raising our 3 children as Catholics, because for me, as a cradle Catholic, that's just what you do. However, I was also a cafeteria Catholic, another alliterative Catholic word, picking and choosing what worked for me until the pickings had become too slim. Having spent all those years in Catholic land, especially growing up in Long Island as a cultural Catholic, where my classmates were either Catholic or Jewish, did have an indelible impact on me starting from my birth. My parents had 3 children born between 1949 and 1954, all having been given holy names, blessed saint names, like Janet Mary. No problem there, because Janet is a saint's name, the derivative of Jane, and adding Mary covers all the bases. Kenneth Warren. Yep, there's a Saint Kenneth and a Saint Warren. And Robert Joseph. Again, excellent interventional saint coverage. But for me, a caboose baby born in 1965, I was legally named Peggy Ann. And as I've been told, this created quite a stir because the priest believed I should be named Margaret Ann and be nicknamed Peggy. But in the 60s, my mother radically insisted on Peggy. And begrudgingly, the parish priest allowed me to have only one saint name. Just Ann, that's me. Perhaps failure to have this double saint intervention led to some of the darker times in my life. You'll never know. So baptism day was a big deal. After being cleansed of original sin and finally being named, my postpartum mom got to prepare a feast for all the relatives, and thus began my Catholic journey through the Catholic days and celebrations. Each year, there were holy days of obligation, days where the faithful were required to attend Mass. January 1st being the Solemnity of Mary. It was nice how this conveniently coincided with New Year's Day. As a small child, I just thought it was church on New Year's Day, followed by a family visit and a ham dinner. It gave a spark to the waning Christmas season. But this was not to be outdone by the very next holy day of obligation, Epiphany, the day when the 3 wise men arrived at the stable to see the infant Jesus. This day always meant the big, artificial, bristly Christmas tree came down, the official end of Christmas, time to put away the plastic candles with the faux wax strippings, and of course the nativity scene got boxed up until next year. While Christmas and Easter are the biggie holidays, with some Catholics unapologetically called CE Catholics for Christmas and Easter, there are other holy days of obligation that used to allow us public school kids to have an extra day off from school. Yes, when you went to school in the late 60s and early 70s in an all Jewish and Catholic community, you were expected to stay home on both the Feast of the Immaculate Conception and Yom Kippur. And as a kid, we took sides. This is my day, that is yours. There was a sense of pride, of belonging, even if we didn't know what the heck the holy day was about. Still, some of my fondest memories of Mass occurred on All Saints' Day. This day, which is in honor of all saints, known and unknown, could also have been called Miscellaneous Day, or Saint Stew, where we toss them all together. But as a family, we frequently went to All Saints' Day Mass after 5 p.m. on the day before All Saints' Day, because you get credit for going the night before. And that meant Halloween evening. So after having done my afternoon trick-or-treating for candy and UNICEF, I was then in a sugar stupor, loaded down with pennies for UNICEF, and the church was basked in candlelight on an autumn evening, and some of the kids, never me, because my parents wouldn't allow, were dressed in costume, a black cat, a Raggedy Ann, and I wonder if that Raggedy Ann was named after Saint Anne, because for the life of me, I can't find a Saint Raggedy. So the Catholic liturgical calendar guided our celebrations and our collective sorrow through many days, named days. From joyous Advent awaiting songs to the lamentations of Lent, from Holy Thursday, when in grief the music would stop and remain gone until the Easter celebration. By naming these days, by calling them forward as a conscientious Catholic, we were defined. Ash Wednesday was another one of those named days that visibly and tangibly identified me. Not a feast day or a day of celebration in any way, but rather the perfect trifecta of Catholic guilt, grief, and penance. On this day, the priest would mark the foreheads of parishioners with a sign of the cross, made from the ashes of last year's palms. Walking through the supermarket or school or anywhere else you might be later on Ash Wednesday was a lot like a Where's Waldo search. I searched for those that had the same mark, the dusted people. As kids, we would compare our ashes, saying, "That's not a cross, that's an elephant. Can't you see its trunk?" But whether elephant or thumbprint or cross, nevertheless, united invisibly on the same team. And after all, isn't that what holy days or holidays are for? Gathering us in the name of love?
Testimonial by Rita Dove. Back when the earth was new and heaven just a whisper, back when the names of things hadn't had time to stick, back when the smallest breezes melted summer into autumn, when all the poplars quivered sweetly in rank and file, the world called, and I answered, each glance ignited to a gaze. I caught my breath, and that was life. Swooned between spoonfuls of lemon sorbet. I was pirouette and flourish. I was filigree and flame. How could I count my blessings when I didn't know their names? Back when everything was still to come, luck leaked out everywhere. I gave my promise to the world, and the world followed me here. Good morning. I'm Tom Cole, a member here since 1998, and a member of the choir just about as long as that. This year, I joined the Adult Religious Education and Spiritual Development team. The dedicated and diligent members there work hard for the good of the church and inspire me to do the same. Experiences like this are why my wife, Carol Hartley, and I pledged at the 5% level years ago and have stayed at or above that ever since. Now, let's talk about holidays. Just one day out of life. Okay. We've already heard from Peg how they structure the year. I'm going to offer a new set of holidays in conformity with UU values, which we can celebrate wholeheartedly. I'll begin with Abraham Joshua Heschel. He identified 3 states of mind: mystery, wonder, and awe. And he said our response to these 3 is the root of religion. I will begin by reflecting on or imagining holidays that could acknowledge these 3. Mystery. Death is a mystery. Loss and grief seem endless. The Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead addresses our needs for meaning and connection as we face this mystery and process our feelings. It does not deny the finality of death. Rather, it acknowledges the persistence of our feelings and memories long after the person to whom they are attached is no more. It gives one hope that oneself will not be forgotten. What wonder? What fills the heart with wonder more than a crowded night sky? Until a century or so ago, anybody could experience this humbling and yet uplifting sight on any clear night. Walt Whitman was able to walk out of the lecture hall where he heard the learned astronomer, and without delay or special effort, look up in perfect silence at the stars. National Dark Sky Week is an attempt to dim the lights and let the stars shine. It already exists around the first new moon in April. I would welcome a broader observance of it. The progression of the night sky creates the illusion that the observer stands at the center of a vast rotating sphere. We need a balancing holiday of awe to decenter ourselves and pop the cosmic bubble of privilege, the bubble of cosmic privilege. There you go. I would start with trees. They outlive us. The oldest of them outlive nations and empires. We need them. They don't need us, except in needing us not to destroy them. Sign me up for finding deeper spiritual meaning in Arbor Day. Okay. Oh, I should, okay. So, mystery, wonder, and awe. Our liberating faith has the roots named by Heschel, like any religion, but we have also developed our own principles for guiding our searches for meaning. I will propose or adapt holidays to illustrate each of them. At this point, you might want to take out your hymnals and open them to hymn number 1, and then turn it back, and there on page 0, on the left-hand side, you'll find the principles, in case you've not committed them to memory. And you'll notice right away, I haven't come up with a holiday for principle number 1. Send me your brainstorms that way. I love to hear it. I'm going to start with number 2, justice. I thought to commemorate the second principle on Frederick Douglass's birthday, but no one knows what day that is. Douglass himself didn't know. It's one small but telling example of the legacy of slavery, that even this little bit of individuality was denied to him. What if we declared the 2 weeks between Juneteenth and July 4th a season of justice? Youth and adults could memorize speeches and declaim them in public, visit courtrooms, visit prisoners. Justice, equity, and compassion. I hope Mr. Douglass would have approved. Acceptance and encouragement. Here's a story on the third principle. In the 1976 Special Olympics, a runner fell on the track. Others in the race, you know the story? Others in the race stopped, helped him up. They joined hands and crossed the finish line together. If we could design a field day that would promote action like that, we would have set an example of acceptance and encouragement, principle number 3. It would be recreation as recreation. Now we come to the fourth, the keystone of our 7th principles, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Combining the ideals of freedom and responsibility characterizes a well-lived UU life. I find this combination embodied in the scientific method as well. A scientist, like my mother up there, a scientist has a right to free inquiry, as well as a responsibility to open his or her findings to criticism and revision. Imagine a holiday given over to open-ended exercises in prediction, observation, and discussion. We could call it Hypothetical Day. Democratic process. Election Day. Make it a holiday. Enough said. What then for our 6th principle? I submit we could use Memorial Day to remind ourselves of the costs of war, which include those who died in service, those who returned with wounds, visible and invisible, the civilians who could not get out of harm's way, or those who could and had to seek mercy as refugees. The costs include the plagues unleashed, the infrastructure destroyed, the dreams deferred, and the hopes dashed in the colossal waste of war. how great do the risks of peace seem by comparison? Happy Interdependence Day. In July of 2018, the neighboring nations of Eritrea and Ethiopia declared an end to their 20-year war. Phone service was restored between them, as was reported on NPR. Feeling like she wanted to be part of history, Frewot Nagash Googled Asmara, the Eritrean capital, and came up with a number for the Crystal Hotel. When I called, she said, the receptionist answered, and I said, I'm calling from Ethiopia to say congratulations. And I told her, I'm very happy. The receptionist told her she was happy too. Nagash told her that someday she would fly to Asmara. The receptionist replied, we will welcome you. Second example. It took Selehadin Eshetu 3 days of dialing random numbers to connect with someone in Eritrea. As he was getting dressed to go to work in Addis Ababa, someone picked up. Eshetu said, hello. They said hello. The person asked, who is this? Eshetu said, I'm calling from Ethiopia to say hi and tell you how happy I am. Eshetu said he heard the same happiness from the voice at the other end of the line. And he said, I'm going to save your number. I'm going to call you regularly. We will be family. The tools for discovering our interdependence are in our hands. We just have to use them the right way.
Welcome. We're happy you're with us today in this room or joining us remotely. We're pleased to have guests with us. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So if you're visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, take a note of the guests seated near you. After the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freedom Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, we offer large print orders of service, personal hearing assistance devices, and have an elevator available as well. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out the yellow cards and place it in an offering basket later in the service. Members with a life event to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards at the end of the row. Please begin passing them now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk to our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome. We call your attention to the announcements in the back of the order of service. Immediately following the service today, visitors are invited to an informal question and answer with a UU Church of Charlotte member. Grab a cup of coffee from Freeman Hall and meet downstairs in the conference room. Next Sunday, there will be a potluck following the second service to celebrate the new congregational year. Please bring a dish to share. We're accepting applications for this year's Racial Justice and Environmental Core Study Groups through September 9th. Please visit the adult programming table in Freeman Hall following the service. More information is available for this and additional events in your order of service and on Current's webpage and accessed through the UUCC website. In a congregation our size, we have many joys and concerns. We hold in our hearts and prayers members who are facing long-term health challenges and those who serve as caregivers. We celebrate with Danielle and Jeremy Maddox upon the birth of their second daughter. Everyone is invited to light a candle during the offering to mark a celebration, concern, or remembrance.
Let us enter into a spirit of meditation and aspiration. I invite you to sit up straight the way a singer would, and for the same reason, to let the most amount of air in and out of your bodies. Feel the breath enter and exit. This sensation is something you have in common with every living, breathing creature. The moment you engage the vocal cords, that breath becomes voice. If you modify the voice with teeth, lips, and tongue, then it becomes speech. And what you say is as individual as you are.
Each week, we give of our treasure, whether called offering, donation, contribution, or pledge. It represents our support of our spiritual home. The ushers will now pass the baskets.
Please rise in body or spirit. Join me in an affirmation of our faith. We are a loving, For closing words, I'm going to return to the beginning, to the words that were up on the screen we haven't heard out loud yet from Paula Poundstone. I don't need a holiday or a feast to feel grateful for my children, the sun, the moon, the roof over my head, music and laughter. But I like to take this time to take the paths of thanks less traveled. You may be seated for the post-lude.